Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thought Leadership Podcast and live show. And I'm here with Jakub, and you can see the excitement. I mean, I'm bringing in the energy in the house, and this is a creative person. If you want to develop your energy and creativity, you have to listen to this episode. I cannot wait for you to connect with Jakub and get to know him. And just a short introduction of who Jakub is. If you're familiar with Golcast, or if you're not familiar, you probably are familiar with Golcast, but you might not know the name of it, but you have seen 100% the videos online. And because Golcast is one of the biggest empowering storytelling, authentic video telling production company in the world. They have 500 million views per month and they have about 30 million fans. And the creative hype man, like he calls himself, is Jakub Szrodt, who is here with me today. So welcome on the show. I'm so glad to have you on.
Thank you, Daria. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. I cannot wait to kick in. So just let's get started with, before, I made a small introduction about you, but you have the coolest title, Creative Hype Man. What does that mean?
I just made it up. It doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, but what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you when you think Creative Hype Man? Because that's what you are. So how do you embody the Creative Hype Man of Golcast?
Yes. So I think, it comes from the reason and the day I made up that title. And obviously it was approved, right? I couldn't just call myself the cool baker in a media company if I don't bake something, right? So I think the goal here and the goal of the name was really not to put too much restraint and not to put myself in a box, right? And that's what creativity is.
Exactly.
So the goal really was to be like, okay, I know I have a role in the company. I know I'm coming on board and bringing certain things to the table. And that's what, the company needs, or the founders saw as a match with the mission of Golcast. But also at the same time, I knew I had in a certain way, place for creativity. And I wasn't, let's say, just managing Facebook or just coming up with ideas for marketing, right? So I would say really that was the approach. And actually, that's what my kind of path at Goalcast was for the past 2.5 years. I've put together some projects like a comic, inspiring comic for a younger audience. I've helped put together our events, Goalcast Live, that we did a bunch in Montreal, in Toronto, and speakers like Vishen Lakiani from Mind Valley that we know very well, speakers like Adam Roa, Eric Edmides came to Montreal to have a live event. But also I helped on smaller projects when we needed creativity for some hiring events or some ways to get Goalcast more on the map or whatever else, right? So I think that's the beauty of, again, my mindset, and also the title, if we want to bring it back to the title, is that yes, it is about hype and creativity, but at the same time, it's adaptable, right? And I think everyone needs to adapt, right? Like Charles Darwin says, the species that survives is not the strongest or the most intelligent, is the one that adapts the best. So especially in those times, right? I don't know where the conversation will go today, but we need to adapt and not be closed-minded, not put ourselves in boxes, etc.
Exactly. And I love it but the reason why I mentioned the title is because many of our listeners, they are leaders or they're founders and they have a team. And sometimes just putting a title on, I usually tell our team members to put their own titles. And, I'll really go away from the idea of assistant or doing this and that social media manager. It's kind of already in the title, we are starting to restrict ourselves. And we're going to talk about creativity here today. And just the title itself can open up for creativity. And I think we can already, explore in the modern era of, world titles and work, how do we actually, name the title? Because that's going to open up or it's gonna limit us. So I love that you have creative hypeman. So let's talk about it. The Goalcast has grown super fast in the latest years, and I would love to hear, how do you keep creativity as a focus in the fast growing company and production team like yours?
For sure. I think really the key point that helped us, and I hope that it will, well, not I hope, I know that it will stay like this forever, but it's easy to kind of sit and be comfortable when you have something that works.
Yeah.
But the reality is that since our distribution is mainly on social media, algorithms, people behavior, etc., always change, right? So for example, if you analyze our videos a few years back, and actually that's what put Golcast on the map, it was mainly speeches, people on stages, whether it's at an event that we host or even someone, or some other conferences. That was our main thing. But today, our main focus is on short documentaries and short films, because we saw, that first of all, the way to differentiate, because there's so many, platforms out there that does inspiring speeches, inspiring videos, in a certain way with music, etc. Well, it's the story, right? We're gonna come back, I think, to the story at some point, but it's the story, but also the more control we have on the story, the better it is. So if we have, let's say, if we analyze the videos, when someone, or even us, when we have a 1 hour speech, we don't have that much control, right? We can prepare with the speaker the story or pinpoint the key moments, but still the delivery is 100% that person on the stage with a crowd. We cannot tell in their ears, can you say again that story or that moment with more emotion or something, right? You cannot do that. But now we're moving more into really crafting the story, whether it's a short documentary or a short film, that is way more in our control, right? Actually, I mean, the short film is 100% in our control, because you have the directors and all the team on set. And if the scene is not acted as it's supposed to fit in the story, we can reshoot the scene. There's nothing stopping us, right? Because I mean, cameras are rolling and we can roll them again, and we can tell the actors how more we want that, right? So it's really, so the reason, again, is not only our will to also create better quality content and tell better stories, but it's also the fact that we saw that basically on social media, the speeches were less and less working. So it led the team to rethink and constantly rethink not just what's working, but what do we want to say as a message. And maybe the way we did it yesterday is not the best way to do it today. Because and that goes for any author, speaker, entrepreneur, you have a goal, you have a purpose, right? And the way you go there can change and should change, right? But sometimes we get comfortable and we stick to the way we do things, and we focus more on the how and not on the what, or on the why, even better, right? So that's the most important thing. If, let's say, you are a speaker and you have a message, and your true goal, because it has to be true, right? In some cases, it might not be the case. But if, that's your true purpose, and you see that, Clubhouse is the new thing because people are stuck at home, blah, 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 or because for whatever reason, that's not the goal here. But then you're not gonna, be stuck in, well, what I do is I speak on stages or videos. If you are connected to your bigger goal, right, your end goal, which is touch audience, and you have the data that whatever millions of people and whatever amount of time is spent on Clubhouse, without almost thinking, you're going to be like, okay, I need to go there, right? Because you're not attached to the how, you're attached to the why, right? So that's really, I think that's the key point to whatever you're doing, to be really kind of always checking in, right? And it doesn't mean you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single day, right? Like, obviously you figure out a way, and when something is working, you're going to do a little bit more of that. That's natural. But still, every month or every week or every quarter minimum, you still take a step back, take a look at the big picture and see, is this the best way I'm serving my purpose, or I'm going in the right direction?
So true. And that not being attached to, I learned to do this, now I'm going to do the same because it was working. And it's going so fast. And the idea with Clubhouse, you mentioned, for instance, is that you can absolutely connect that to what you're already doing. So if, for instance, we are doing podcasts, we are usually connecting Clubhouse to the podcast, and we're connecting our social media to the podcast. Like there's so much links in between, and then you play with that and you are creative. But it's so important, like you mentioned, Jakub, is that we cannot stay attached to the platforms or the way we're doing it. We have to stay attached to our purpose, to why are we doing this, and where do we want to get with it? Well, we want to connect with people. If people are on Clubhouse and you're trying hard with your Facebook group, maybe it's time to move over, because that's what is happening right now, and that's fine. We are moving, and maybe one day, and probably one day, we're going to move to something else. And that's completely fine. But I love what you mentioned as well about not doing the same things. But what I see often with, someone working really hard on their mission is that they get into this tunnel vision where they cannot see clearly anymore. And what I usually tell them, if they're visionary leaders or they, want to become a thought leader, is that they have to spend about 30% of their week in the space of creativity, basically making sure that their schedule allows them to have 1-2 days per week. And if you look at it, just to think, just to reflect, just to meditate, just to have, things coming through you, creativity coming through you. So that's something I practice, and I tell my clients to practice. But I would love to hear how you're doing that in, one of the most creative companies I know. How do you fuel creativity? Because you might, how do you do your meetings? How do you explore new ideas, trends? Like, how does it work on a everyday basis?
Yes. Okay, so first of all, the most important thing to know and to underline and to highlight is that creativity, it is in a way, but if we just simplify things, it's not a skill, it's a state, okay? Yes. Like mindfulness, like happiness, it's a state, right? You're not, without getting into too much details, basically creativity is a state. And sometimes that state can come kind of on its own, right? Like we know that hallelujah moment, Einstein or Da Vinci had a lot of those while like taking a shower or taking a walk, right? So that actually, there is an explanation to that, is that when you have things on your mind and you've gathered all the information, when you take a step back, right? Whether it's a shower or a walk or whatever it is, well, then your brain on its own makes connections and kind of put things together, right? Connect the dots in sleep, while walking, etc. So that's why, sometimes in the morning you can have a burst that comes out of nowhere. It feels like it comes out of nowhere. But the beauty is that you can put yourself in that state, right? So there's two things I would love to share with you and your audience today. First of all is brainstorm, right? Brainstorming sessions are purely creativity, right? The goal is to come up with as much possibilities, ideas, so there's no like limitations, okay? And then something that is not exactly the same, but that is connected and might sometimes even be like one leading to the other, is deep work, or a state of deep work, right? And that, to give obviously credit, these are not things that I came up with in the science lab. I've been researching and reading a lot of things. Obviously, James Clear, is like, for example, the master of habits. Stephen Kotler is the master, or actually like his focus is in deep flow. But if we simplify things, and also through my personal experience and putting dots together. Okay, so first of all, the deep state or the flow, right? We call it flow, deep state, deep work, whatever word we're using. First of all, what's important is to put yourself in peak state. Okay, so if you've been sitting down for 3 hours, don't expect your brain to like lighten up just because you're like, okay, I'm gonna get creative now. No, okay, so get up, move, do 10 push-ups, put your favorite song and start dancing, do some fire breath, right? Like Tony Robbins type of like, moving and breathing, whatever you wish. There's like a gazillion ways to put yourself in deep state. Then also putting, for example, let me actually start at the beginning. So first of all, you need in order to get into that state, you need to kind of manipulate what's around you, right? So meaning put the right ingredients together, because you can have the recipe, you can have the willingness to cake a bake. If you're not having, the right ingredients, well, that cake will not bake itself by magic, right?
Yeah.
So I might miss a few because there's quite a few, but we might maybe share it in the notes or in the description. Absolutely. Or the caption. But first of all, you have to have a clear goal. Okay, so you're like, okay, today I am gonna think about how to get my podcast to the next level. Okay, yes. So that's number one. You have to have a clear goal. Write it down. I love working when I get into deep state. I love writing. Not on my computer, because I'm most of the day on my computer. Yeah. So the fact of changing the scenery and all the ingredients will help me get in deep state. So taking a little notepad and a pen, moving from your regular space of work to somewhere else. And it can be literally at the other end of the table. It doesn't have to be like literally somewhere else. But yes, if you have, a coffee shop that you love, and there's like, a more silent or more cozy place in that coffee shop, for sure going there would help. So changing the environment. And again, it can be the other side of the table. It doesn't have to be like, you have to go outside or something. You have to block off 50 minutes minimum. Okay, you cannot again, yes, you can for 25 minutes, but to have the best results, you have to take the time also to get into that state and ride the wave, right? Yes. You have to block off all distractions, like people coming in, talking to you, cell phone notifications, computer notifications, everything. Block off all distractions for 50 minutes. Put 50 minutes on your schedule. You don't have anything else to do. You're not thinking of all the rest of things to do during the day. You're not like, oh, I'm waiting for that call from the bank. No distractions. Block off 50 minutes, change of scenery, put some music, ideally without words, very repetitive, kind of like, for example, I love either like kind of like, music from movies, right? Like from like The Last Samurai, or from like the Inception or something like this. Or if you want even more like kind of energy, you can even put, some deep house, right? So some kind of repetitive, same song on repeat. So your brain kind of, so your brain doesn't like, is not stimulated by novelty of like a new song every 4 minutes. It's the same on repeat. Again, without words or very little words. So again, you're not like listening to what is said, etc., etc. And also what's super important is that goal or what you're working on has a good balance of challenge. And like, basically what I mean by that is that if it's too easy, it's not going to be challenging. If it's too hard, it's going to be scary. Right. So it's really important that really the task you're working on, and it's up to you to phrase it or to adjust it, right? Even if the big goal might be very complicated, you just break it down to something smaller. And you're like, today I'm thinking not what different types of guests I can have on my podcast, not what other chapters I can add to my book. I'm just thinking about how I can get that book to as much hands as possible, for example, right? And then basically you let the magic happen and you're writing, and there's no bad answers. You cannot be also focused. Do not be focused on results, okay? The fact, if you're overthinking, if you have the fear of like not coming up with something, or if you're like, as soon as you write something, you're like, no, that's stupid, is not good, because then basically you're too much in your like technical brain. You want to tap into your creativity, which is the other side of the brain, right? We say whether it's true or not, the left brain, the right brain, whatever, but it is true that if you're using your logic well, then the creativity will not, or will have a very harder time to come up, right? So for example, to give a very tangible example, an exercise I love doing, and that's kind of typing it into the second thing, which is the brainstorm, which is again related, but it's a different category of things, let's say, is the Airbnb brainstorm. I think I called it like this. I don't know if there's an official name, but what the founders of Airbnb did to, when they were launching, they knew their competition was basically all the established hotel, all the system, the fact that people are comfortable in a hotel, they know how to book it, blah, 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 blah. So basically they're like, okay, it's really the experience that will make us stand out. The experience of, well, everything, right? How you book it, how you get to the place, the way you're, either welcomed in person or not, right? The service, the fact that you see the pictures, all that. And basically they said, okay, what would be a 6 on 10 experience? And then they write it down, right? Like you book it, you receive an email of confirmation, but that sounds very like, template type of email, blah, blah, blah. And they write it down for a 6 on 10. So it's an okay experience, but nothing outstanding. And then they went to 8 on 10. And then they went to 10 on 10. Like, what's the perfect experience? And then they went to 12 on 10. And then they went to 14 on 10. And then they went to 16 on 10. Thinking of like, imagine we pick up the person with a limousine at the airport and we find out on their social media whether they love like fruits or they eat vegan food or they love wine. And we like, greet them with all this. But that's obviously, that's not the case. That's not the goal here to be, again, logical, right? So you go into that space, and the idea is that most of the things that today differentiate and that made Airbnb a success, which is the personalized, right? Like a super host on Airbnb will have suggestions where to eat, where to go for coffee, right? In the Airbnb, they will greet you with like, a little chocolate or bottle of water or whatever, right? And that came from the things that were in the 14 on 10, 16 on 10, but then after at the end brought to something possible, right? So the limousine and the champagne and the, the things that are not, they're not, they couldn't be done, right? I mean, especially like, how do you say, like, so you have, return on investment that is logical, that, what someone's paying and what is your cost is obviously like, there's a balance, right? So, but the interesting thing here is that the ideas that became reality and that gave the success of Airbnb, some of them came from that 14 on 10, 16 on 10. So that's the importance, that when you are in that deep state, you're not in a state of like, okay, that's not possible. What's possible? No, you're just flowing, and you're not, again, because that's a state of flow, and you're not focused on results, right? We're human. Sometimes you will work 50 minutes, 1 hour on something and have nothing tangible. That's normal, right? Like ask any painter, any artist, did you ever write a song for 1 hour or even 5 days and you didn't come up with something? Of course, right? But then you have also, exactly. And sometimes also in 10 minutes, you have the idea that will change the world or change your world, right? So that's really, really one of the most important things. So when you put those ingredients together, right? The music, changing the scenery, having a clear goal, having a good balance of challenge, not too hard, not too easy. All those things gives you all the chances in the world to get into a flow state, into a deep work state, and come up with creative ideas.
I love it. And it's so useful because I can really relate to our members in our academy when they create their offers, because we work with a lot of coaches, consultants, authors, people who are there to serve. And we have this concept again. I love to break down and like, is this really the only way to do it? Is, coaching might be seen as like we are doing this, weekly calls or bi-weekly calls. And what we challenge them to do is they called the greatest show. What is the greatest show you can create for your clients? What is the best experience possible? And I love that it can be really related to what you're saying, is that when we think bigger experience, it doesn't have to be a jet, but if you start with that, and that's how we usually create those offers, is that you start with the biggest service you can give to someone. You're looking at your dream client and you see them and you say, what can I do to make their life and year the best year ever? What can I do for them? What they need and want and love? How can I make it easy for them? And then you go into this space of you just getting really creative, and you have to allow yourself to be creative, because some of those ideas are completely crazy, but in a good way, because you're opening up that creativity. And you mentioned that, Jakub, is that you cannot go into that state saying, this is not possible, it's going to cost too much, and this and this. It's about opening and expanding your vision. And creativity has, it's not only in videos, it's in your work. If you're, if you're working as a consultant coach, it's also in what you're offering to your clients. Why would you offer something that is less than the best possible, less than what you can really serve at the highest level, because the industry is not doing that? And so it's about exploring that, like you're saying, a deep state, you are mentioning, putting the music on, creating the space for it, and then going to what is that 14 out of 10 experience? Because many times, actually, no, if you look down, when you get to the logical time, which is not the moment that you're doing it, it's later on, so not mixing them up. When you get to that state, then you will realize that actually a lot of those things, we can make it happen today. And why are we not doing that? So it's about, I love the parts. It's so important. And for the ones listening and watching this is the creative work and the logical strategic work is not at the same moment. They go together. Of course, you need both in any business, but there is a space for creativity that has to put, the creativity is the vision. Creativity is what will make it possible for you not to be stuck in the old ideas and just working harder for no reason. Creativity is actually leadership. It's actually what's going to expand your business. And somehow you put that into the moments of, let's go for those, team meetings and just have some creativity. No, it should be the priority. And this is why I love that what you're doing in Goalcast. You're the creative hype man. You put creativity as a core focus of your business. This is why I also believe that your business is growing so fast and you're impacting so many lives, because you're putting creativity and expanded vision as a core focus. And that allows you to think bigger. And, and this is something we can all apply. You don't have to be a production company to do that. For the ones listening, watching it, if you're a leader, if you're a consultant, if you're an author, speaker, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're, just an entrepreneur starting out listening to this, it's the way you're thinking, it's the state. And I absolutely connect to this. And I mean, it's amazing the way you put it together and explain it. Thank you so much for sharing your process. I would love to go a bit into another angle that I know is very specific for Goalcast, which is authentic storytelling. And creativity and authentic storytelling are two things that I love, and I think that we can all explore. And storytelling somehow is, as a speaker, I've been a speaker for many years, we always heard storytelling being part of everything we're doing. But today, as we are recording this, we are, many of people are in lockdown, we're at home, and almost like we forgot that we can bring that into the social media world, and we can bring that into anything we're doing. So would you like to share a bit about how do you approach authentic storytelling?
And that's a conversation for years and years. And honestly, there's a lot of people that could speak on that way better than me. But if I can say it from my perspective, because, I'm not working on the videos, right? So let's put it out there very clearly that I'm so far from the talented people in our team. But what I can say, and especially, I want to put myself in your audience and client's shoes, which is, most of the time probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they are the face kind of, or of their coaching. So they are speaking, right? So it's not from a media perspective that, not media or whatever, but like a content production company that, almost every single video is a different person, right? So it's a different approach. And actually there's a very good video and talk of the two founders of Goalcast and Vision at AFest. So we could maybe also link it in the descriptions. Absolutely. And, they dive really deeper of what makes, a good story, and also how it can go viral, et cetera, et cetera. But what I would say is really the key things, and actually these are like, principles that goes the same for like marketing and almost sales and almost everything, is that you need to put yourself in your clients or your audience shoes and see it from their perspective. Okay. Because I think so many times we will get into just our head, and it's not a negative thing. It's just like, if you are someone that has a purpose that is bigger than you, well, you have to consider other ingredients or things than just you, right? If we're talking about like how to be happy with yourself and how to, tell a story to like, your spouse or your best friend, that's a different thing, right? Then I would say just the fact of being, authentic and also passionate, and giving details to the story, whatever, that will make a good conversation, right? Yeah. But as soon as you go more on the public side, more on videos that you do publicly, you will post on your social media, you will even have some coaching calls, etc. You really have to think on how is this story related and connected to the audience and how it can serve. So, for example, with that approach, the number one thing that is important is that in, let's say, even a speech, a 1 hour speech, a video, what doesn't matter, have one key message that is supported by a story. Yes. Right? So if you tell a story about a time you were lost in the woods and like, you had fear and overthinking and blah, 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 that's beautiful. And it's good that you paint a picture, because actually that's also proven that stories and imagery get people emotionally involved. So that's another element. Key element is the emotion that you portray and also that people feel, right? So if you tell an angry story, well, it might be good that you even get angry, right? Like you're not saying it without any emotion, because how do you want people to get emotionally involved if you're emotionless, right? Of course. But, coming back to the story, you have to have that one key message, and that basically your story supports that, your emotion supports that, and you support that by saying, let's say at the end, or even giving a glimpse at the beginning, what it is about. Yeah. And what is the message, right? And just to give, I don't know, some supportive, because I also love like science and to understand how the brain works and everything, there is a reason why the best, presentations, whether business or even regular talks, had a lot of imagery, and it's even analyzed. Steve Jobs had incredible imagery in his even presentations of products, right? Like, for example, saying that 1 person in 6 in the world will one day have an iPhone, that's very visual. Yes. You don't speak in millions, you don't speak in percentage, you speak in 1 person in 6. So everyone can see an image of like, oh my God, I think there's a lot of people in the world. I'm not sure how much, I'm not sure where they are, but like, I can only imagine that, if I'm with 6 people, at least one has a iPhone, and then the world, well, it's millions and millions and billions times that little circle, right? So I would say really that's the most important thing. And, it's a success if people get away from you something they can sum up in 1 sentence. If you try to, spit out all your wisdom and knowledge and all the messages you want in 1 speech, 1 video, 1 podcast, people get confused. Yes. And if they walk away with nothing they remember because there was too much, well, nobody wins. right? And
Exactly.
that's the number one error I see anyone, I don't even want to put just coaches or speakers, like literally everyone do, is that they feel they need to like spit it everything out. And it might come from, you know, they want to prove, they want to, maybe they didn't organize their thoughts. It might come from a lot of places, but the most important thing is don't overestimate the simplicity of a
Yes.
message and the emotion and also the story that supports all of that.
Absolutely.
That's
I
it.
love it, Jakub. Great advice. And I can really relate to that, having coached many speakers. Sebastian, my co-founder and partner, he has coached several TEDx editions full. And when they come in, there's like, yeah, I want to put all this in. And the best TEDx, the best talks are the ones where it's so simple. It's a
Yeah.
story. I can remember stories, people being on the beach, on the lake with their partner, and they just tell the story how they are there, what's going on, and then they give that, that life lesson in the end, and that's a TEDx talk. And it's just amazing because I see it, I remember it even years later, because it was so, it was so easy to connect to. I've heard some people, I don't remember who it was, but said that we should speak like we're speaking to a child, almost like we're explaining it to a child, make it so simple. And you mentioned that, Jakob, it's sometimes when we want to impress or we want to do good, and we have a big speaking engagement with coming up, we want to give more, but it's counterproductive because we end up overwhelming people. So it's just like simplifying, make it imagery, make it a story, get to the one lesson with that one story. That's a great advice, and we can all apply that to so many different reasons. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I would love to continue this conversation because there is your way of thinking and your way of expressing creativity and what you're working on is amazing. And I know there's so many takeaways from this for the ones listening, watching. I love to always tell people to use this as a mini workshop, use it as something actionable. So if someone is listening, watching this today, what would you like them to take action on? What if there's one thing that you will say, like, okay, if you want to start with creativity, if you want to explore creativity in your business, with your team, in your life, what action can they take?
I love it. Okay, so we talked about the right brain, the left brain, right? The execution, right? Which is, let's say, if we want, again, to put a clear image, let's say that the execution side, answering calls, answering emails, doing meetings, etc., is the technical part of brain, right? And let's compare it to anything that you push. So for example, a workout or going to run or doing a sport, right? Or even anything that uses, right? That uses your energy.
Yeah.
The body, you need to rest, right? You need to relax, you need to drink water, you need to sleep, you need to meditate or yoga or whatever it is, right? Meditation is not the same as a workout, right? Meditation fuels you because it's a resting state, and the workout is the time to push your limits, and both together balance each other. So if all you do is work out all day, you will not be healthier, your body will collapse. And if you meditate all day, well, maybe there's also missing a little bit of movement and a little bit of like, pushing yourself. No disrespect to like Shaolin monks that meditate for 17 hours a day.
Which is also
Anyways,
pushing a bit, right?
100% mentally, 100% incredible level. So the same goes for the need of the balance of those two. So basically, if you really understand that need, right? Like I need to as much workout and rest, I need to as much execute as strategize, think, and go into that side of the brain.
Yeah.
So basically, that's step number one. You really understanding the balance of both together and the need for both, not one or the other, the need for both. Then the next steps is the action. And the action in today's world, especially for, coaches or speakers or anyone probably, with a lot of things going on in the world, is to schedule it. There's no better way to getting into action than schedule it. Like literally right now, as you listening or watching, going to your calendar, We'll wait with Daria.
Yes, we're waiting.
Go to your calendar.
Seriously, go guys.
Yeah,
And you don't even have to go anywhere because you can sit and you can take your phone and just open it.
exactly.
Block it
Exactly. Block off 45 minutes. If it's really impossible, even 30 minutes, ideally 1 hour, and call it deep work, call it brainstorm, call it whatever you want, and you block it off.
in.
So
Yes.
that's number one step. And then putting together the ingredients we listed before for the perfect cake, for the perfect
Yes.
flow cake, right? And then basically, letting yourself immersed in that experience. That's
Love
it.
it.
Like once you are in that situation, right? You've put all those ingredients. You don't need to do much else except let whatever is going in your mind get on paper, right? And that's
Yes.
it. And trust me, like that's a fact. Even if that first session is not, you coming up with world-breaking ideas, still trust the process. As anyone starting, a new sport or a new hobby, you won't necessarily be incredible at it. But remember, it is maybe on a certain level a skill, but it's mainly a state. So creativity is a state. And now, if I can just add a little cherry on top of the sundae, a more simple, let's say, creative moment that you can create in your day-to-day is a session of brainstorm. And that you can, block off 30 minutes. Some of the elements for deep work can still be put in there. So, music or maybe hyping yourself up before, but, it's less, I would say it's just more simple, even though both can go together. So a session of brainstorm, basically, again, you set a clear goal, okay, for the session, and it can be very broad. It can be more broad than a deep work session, okay? So it can be literally business ideas. What would be a business idea?
Yeah.
And you go full on and you're not fixated on like, okay, I want just like a service idea. No, if you just want, to let the creativity flow, you can come up with ATMs with cupcakes and shoes that, makes you fly. Doesn't matter. You get into a brainstorm. So first step is setting a goal, broad or more specific. Second goal is the first session of brainstorm, let's say. So for 10-15 minutes, you go full on, no limits, no stupid idea, no nothing. Then the second part of that, actually the third, first being setting the goal, second being the no limit brainstorm, second is research. Because if, let's say, you're thinking of ways of getting your podcast known, right?
Yeah.
You want to also research what's out there, what's already done, because that also can be things that can not limit yourself, but let's say put you back into more a realistic what's next and what can really be tangible or done, right? Because that's ultimately the goal. The goal is not just to be incredibly creative and come up with crazy ideas that, I want to sell cupcakes on moon. Okay, but like, how can that impact your life or other lives, right? So obviously, first session of brainstorm is the no limit, but then is the research. So you check a little bit what's out there, what others are doing, and then you do a second session of brainstorm with a little bit more kind of going down the funnel, right? More specific and more tangible and more realistic things. And then that's where maybe ideas from the first part of the brainstorm might spark. And that's why the other one is exactly that. It's the Airbnb brainstorm, right? The first part is you go to 16 on 10, but then you bring it back to like, okay, what's really doable, right? So then the last part of the brainstorm is really ideas. It can be new ideas because you've researched, so you have new like information, you have new things, but it can be also taking an idea from the first brainstorm or the first part and making it more tangible or doable. And then at the end of that session, you have something that you can, take it to the next step and start executing, or schedule another session because you need to think more or dive deeper into that specific thing.
Great. It makes me think about the rose method, which is a method that's used. It's like they don't say it's a yoga, but it's a physical activity that I've trained myself in, which is called the rose method. And the muscles, what they're basically telling you is to practice, focus, and diffuse. And there's a moment when you really go strong into like a posture, or you train yourself with the breathing, and then you just diffuse. And I apply that to my life. And I think it can really be related to this creativity and the strategic thinking in your brain. So basically going into a state of you're opening up, there's the brainstorming, there is all idea. It's the diffuse mode. It's the diffuse mode, meaning that you're letting things just like flow, there, overflow, and there's no limits. It's basically, there's no box or something. And then there is the moment when naturally you can also listen to your energy. Like, we didn't speak so much about that today, but you can listen to energetically, you will feel when you want to go into the diffuse mode, because focus mode, because you will get to a moment where like, okay, I've gone so far as I can go. And then you go into the focus mode and you say, okay, I had taken all this. And then you get strategic, you get more into research, you go into you're using your logical mind. And then there's a moment when that's like, okay, I'm done. And you go back to the focus, for the diffuse mode, and you go between those. And that allows the creativity to flow. And I think it's just another way to kind of, to say about the brainstorming or the creativity part is there are basically two states that you enter in your work and in your life, and they go together. And the more you listen to them and you use them in your business, in your life, the easier it gets to go from one to another. And you will know when to go from one to another. You know when, okay, I have to go into this state and focus. And then you have this, focus mode. And, that's what, like a boot camp can be a focus mode. And then you have the creative retreats or creative moments when you just like, brainstorm and go big. And them together, that's magic. Basically, that's magic.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it has been such a pleasure to have you on, Jakub. Where can people find you? Where can people explore your magical world, your creativity? Where can the people read about you, or explore what you're working on at the moment?
Awesome. Yeah, I would say mainly the Instagram. So Funky Jakub, Funky as Funky, and Jakub, Jakub. That's it, as simple as this.
Wonderful. So we're gonna put all the notes in the show description and all the comments below, so you check it out. So if you have listened, the books we mentioned or the different projects we mentioned, and of course Jakub's profile, so you can check out what he's working on at the moment and connect with him. And before we end this, as we want you to take action, and we were talking about this, scheduling thing, and if you haven't done it yet, I want you to go to your phone. And you can pause us, but because that's the beauty of social media, you can pause us on audio, video. And I want you to write done in the comments when you're done. Done means basically put at least 1 hour of creative work for yourself. And if you don't have 1 hour of creative work, then make sure that you start to question yourself about how you're putting your schedule together, because this is one of the most important things. 1 hour in the upcoming week of creative work. When you're done it, put done in the comment below, and we want to see that, and let us know what was the biggest takeaway for you. But the most important actually is the done, #done, and that's all. And thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Jakub, for being with us. And until next time, have a magical creative day.
Yes. Bye.
Bye-bye.